3 days after my mother's funeral, her lawyer called and said, "Mr. Mitchell, there's a clause in your mother's will you need to hear in person. And Robert, bring both your daughters. Don't come alone." When we arrived at his office and he read what my mother had written, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. "I'm Robert Mitchell. I'm 62 years old, retired pharmacist, living in Portland, Oregon. My mother, Catherine Mitchell, died at 84 from what the doctors called natural causes heart failure in her sleep. She'd been healthy, active, volunteering at the library until the week she passed. The funeral was small, dignified. Sarah and Emma, my two daughters, had flown in from Seattle and San Francisco. We'd sorted through her belongings, donated most of her clothes, scheduled the house for sale. Standard grief, standard procedures. Then David Krause called. My mother's attorney for 30 years. His voice on the phone was different, tight, careful, like a man choosing words around broken glass. "There's something unusual in Catherine's will," he'd said. "A sealed section. Instructions that it only be opened after her death, and only in the presence of you and both your daughters. Robert, I've known your mother since 1994. I've never seen anything like this." "What kind of instructions?" I'd asked. "I can't discuss it over the phone. Can you come in tomorrow? And bring Sarah and Emma. Your mother was very specific. All three of you must be present." That was Tuesday morning. By Tuesday evening, Sarah had rebooked her flight. Emma had taken emergency family leave from her tech job. We met at Krause's downtown office Wednesday at 2 p.m., the three of us sitting in leather chairs across from his massive oak desk. Krause was 70, gray-haired, with the careful dignity of a man who'd spent 5 decades managing other people's secrets. He placed a sealed manila envelope on the desk between us. My mother's handwriting across the front, to be opened only after my death, in the presence of Robert, Sarah, and Emma Mitchell. No exceptions, David Krause. "Before I open this," Krause said quietly, "I need to tell you something. Last year, your mother came to see me. She was updating her will standard stuff, dividing assets, clarifying bequests. Then she handed me this envelope and said, 'David, when I die, you read this to my son and granddaughters. All 3 together. Don't let Robert see it alone.'" My stomach tightened. Why would she say that? I don't know. But Catherine was very clear. She said, "If something happens to me before the truth comes out, they need to know together. They'll need each other." He paused. She also left me a second envelope. Instructions I was to follow after reading this one to you. Sarah leaned forward. "My eldest daughter, 36, environmental lawyer, always the one who asked hard questions. Mr. Krause, did my grandmother seem afraid? Was she in danger?" "No," he said carefully. She seemed, resolved. Like someone preparing for an ending they knew was coming. He broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. My mother's handwriting, dated the 15th of March 2024, 6 months before she died. Krause began reading aloud. "My dearest Robert, Sarah, and Emma, if you're hearing this, I'm gone. And there's something I've kept from you for 29 years, something that will change how you see me, how you see our family, and how you understand your own lives. I'm sorry for the secrets. I'm sorry for the lies. But everything I did to protect you, Robert, especially you. You were never supposed to know the truth about Margaret." Margaret. The name hit me like cold water. My mother's best friend from nursing school, the woman who disappeared in 1995 when I was 33. The case that had obsessed my mother for years afterward. Krause continued. "Margaret didn't run away. She didn't start a new life in California like the police said. She was murdered. And I spent 29 years collecting evidence to prove who killed her, and to protect you from the same fate. There's a storage unit in Beaverton, Unit 127, at Secure Space on Canyon Road. The key is in my safety deposit box at Wells Fargo, along with instructions for David. Inside that unit is everything. Files, photographs, recordings, proof. Robert, you need to see what's there, but you cannot go alone. Take Sarah and Emma, and Robert, be very careful who you trust. Especially doctors. Especially Dr. William Hayes. With all my love, Mom." The room went silent. Emma spoke first, her voice thin. "Who's Dr. Hayes?" "Our family doctor," I said, my mouth dry. "He's been Mom's physician for 20 years. He's my doctor. He delivered both of you." Sarah's face had gone pale. "Why would Grandma warn us about him?" Kraus pulled out a second envelope. "She left this for me." He opened it, scanned quickly, then looked up. "These are instructions for accessing her safety deposit box. And there's a note. David, if Robert tries to go to that storage unit without his daughters, stop him. If Dr. Hayes contacts the family asking questions about my death or my belongings, call the police immediately. If anything happens to Robert, Sarah, or Emma after my death, give everything in the storage unit to Detective James Park, Portland PD Cold Case Unit." My hands were shaking. 29 years. Margaret Caldwell had vanished in July 1995. She and my mother had been inseparable nursing school classmates in the 60s, raised their kids together, volunteered at the same hospital. Then one morning, Margaret didn't show up for their weekly breakfast. Her car was found at Trillium Lake, keys still in the ignition, no sign of struggle. Police ruled it probable suicide. Margaret had been depressed, they said. Marital problems, financial stress. The case went cold. My mother never believed it. She'd spent years writing letters to the police, hiring private investigators, collecting news clippings. It had consumed her until around 2005, when she'd suddenly stopped talking about it. I'd assumed she'd finally accepted the truth and moved on. But she hadn't moved on. She'd gone deeper. "Mr. Kraus," Sarah said carefully, "what exactly did my grandmother do professionally? I mean, I know she was a nurse, but—" "Actually," Kraus interrupted gently, "she wasn't just a nurse. In 1987, Catherine went back to school, got her private investigator license. She worked quietly, mostly insurance fraud, background checks, corporate due diligence. She never advertised. Most of her work came through attorney referrals." He paused. "I hired her myself a few times. She was meticulous, thorough. She had a gift for finding what people wanted hidden." I stared at him. "I didn't know that. She never told me." "She told very few people. And after Margaret disappeared, Catherine stopped taking new clients. But she kept her license active." Kraus met my eyes. "I think she spent the last 29 years investigating one case. Margaret's murder." We drove to the Wells Fargo in silence. Sarah had rented a car at the airport. She drove while Emma sat beside her, and I took the back seat, staring out the window at familiar streets that suddenly felt foreign. My mother had been a private investigator. For 29 years, she'd been building a case against someone. Against Dr. Hayes, apparently. William Hayes had been my family physician since 1998. He'd treated my high blood pressure, my daughter's childhood asthma, my mother's arthritis. He'd played golf with me 3 times. I'd recommended him to coworkers. He'd sent a beautiful flower arrangement to my mother's funeral. The safety deposit box was small. Inside, one key, labeled Secure Space Unit 127, and a USB drive in a Ziploc bag, labeled "For Robert, watch this first." "We need a laptop," Emma said. She was 32, software engineer at a tech startup, always the practical one. "Let's go back to Grandma's house." My mother's house. I still had the key. The real estate agent wasn't starting showings until next week. We let ourselves in through the front door, and the emptiness hit me. We'd already donated most of her furniture, boxed up her dishes. The living room echoed. Emma pulled out her MacBook. I inserted the USB drive. One video file. "Robert, watch this first." MP4. I clicked play. My mother's face filled the screen. She was sitting in an unfamiliar room, bare walls, harsh fluorescent lighting. The timestamp said the 2nd of April 2024, 5 months before she died. She looked exhausted, her hair pulled back, no makeup. But her eyes were clear, focused. "Robert," she began, and her voice made my chest ache. "If you're watching this, I'm dead, and I need you to understand something before you go any further. Everything I'm about to tell you will hurt. You'll feel betrayed. You'll feel angry. But please, please believe me, everything I did was to keep you alive." Sarah grabbed my hand. Emma moved closer. In July 1995, Margaret Caldwell discovered something terrible. She'd been volunteering at a women's shelter, helping women escape abusive relationships. One woman, Jennifer Torres, told Margaret she'd been drugged and assaulted by a doctor. Margaret started asking questions. She found 3 more women, same story. Same doctor. My mother's voice hardened. Dr. William Hayes. I couldn't breathe. Margaret came to me. She had evidence, medical records, testimony, dates. She was going to the police. I begged her to wait, to build an airtight case, but she wouldn't. She said women were in danger. She called Hayes, confronted him, gave him 24 hours to turn himself in. My mother's eyes glistened. He killed her that night, made it look like suicide at Trillium Lake. The video continued. I couldn't prove it. The evidence Margaret had collected was in her home office, and after her disappearance, someone broke in, cleaned everything out. Police blamed it on robbery, but I knew Hayes had destroyed it. My mother leaned closer to the camera. So I started over. I spent 29 years tracking him. Every hospital he worked at, every patient complaint, every woman who'd been in his care. I found 17 victims between 1,988 and 2,023. 17 women he'd drugged and assaulted. Most of them never reported it. Those who did were dismissed, no physical evidence, just their word against a respected physician. Sarah was crying quietly. Emma's face was rigid with fury. But I documented everything. Photographs of Hayes meeting patients outside his office. Bank records showing payments to silence victims. Medical records showing prescription irregularities. Audio recordings of him admitting to one victim that what happened between us should stay private. Robert, I have enough evidence to put him away for life. My mother's expression shifted softer, sadder, and I have evidence of something else. Something that will hurt you to know. Robert, in June 1995, right before Margaret disappeared, she told you what she'd discovered. You were going to help her go to the police. You were going to testify about irregularities you'd seen in Hayes's prescriptions. You were a pharmacist at the same hospital. You'd filled his orders. You had professional credibility. I didn't remember this. I couldn't remember any of it. Hayes found out. He came to our house. I was at work. He drugged you. Not enough to kill you, just enough to make you sick. Then he told you it was an allergic reaction, put you on medication that caused memory problems. For 6 months after Margaret disappeared, you were on drugs Hayes prescribed. Drugs that made you foggy, forgetful. You lost chunks of 1,995. You thought it was stress, but Robert, it was Hayes. He erased your memory to keep you from testifying. The video blurred as my eyes filled with tears. Sarah's grip on my hand tightened. I couldn't prove it without risking your life. If Hayes knew I suspected him, he'd kill you too. So I did something terrible. I kept you on mild sedatives for another year. I told you they were for anxiety. But really, I was keeping you compliant, keeping you from asking questions until enough time had passed that Hayes thought you were no longer a threat. My mother's voice broke. I made you forget. I stole a year of your life, and I've carried that guilt every day since. But Robert, I kept you alive. That's what mattered. The screen went dark for a moment, then brightened again. Everything I collected is in the storage unit. 17 victims, medical records, financial records, recordings of Hayes admitting to assaults, and evidence of Margaret's murder, forensic details the police overlooked. Robert, you need to take this to Detective Park. He's trustworthy. He'll know what to do. She paused. But be careful. Hayes is still out there. He's still practicing. He knows I've been watching him. We had a confrontation in March. I told him I had evidence. He threatened me. That's when I made this video and updated my will. If I die suddenly, Hayes did it. Don't let him get away with this. Please. For Margaret. For those 17 women. For justice. My mother smiled sadly. I love you. I've always loved you. You were a good son. I'm sorry I had to lie to protect you. Forgive me. The video ended. We sat in silence for a long time. Sarah was sobbing. Emma stared at the blank screen, jaw clenched. I felt hollowed out, like someone had reached inside and removed everything that made me me. "Dad," Emma said finally, "did Grandma die of natural causes?" I looked at her. The death certificate said heart failure. Who signed it? My stomach dropped. I don't remember. We were so shocked. I pulled out my phone, searched my emails, found the funeral home's message with the attached death certificate. Attending physician, Dr. William Hayes. Sarah stood abruptly. "We're going to that storage unit, right now. It's almost 6 p.m., I said. "I don't care. We're going now. And then we're calling this Detective Park." Her voice was steel. "If Hayes killed Grandma, we're putting him in prison." Secure Space on Canyon Road was a sprawling complex of orange doors, security fences, and bright halogen lights. We signed in at the office. The attendant barely looked up and found Unit 127 on the second floor. The key turned smoothly. Inside was a time capsule. Filing cabinets lined 3 walls, each drawer meticulously labeled in my mother's handwriting. 17 names. Margaret Caldwell, 1995. Timeline, 1988 to 2024. Evidence log. Financial records, medical records, photographs. In the center of the unit sat a desk with a computer setup, old desktop tower, monitor, keyboard, post-it note stuck to the screen. Password, Robert1962. My birth year. Emma booted it up. The desktop background was a photo of me and my mother from 2010, both of us smiling at Sarah's law school graduation. Emma clicked a folder labeled Start Here. Inside, a comprehensive report, 247 pages, titled Evidence Against William Charles Hayes, M.D., compiled by Catherine Mitchell, P.I., 1995 to 2024. It was meticulous. Victim names, dates, hospital shifts Hayes had worked, prescription records, cross-referenced with assault reports, photographs of Hayes entering hotels with women who weren't his wife, bank statements showing payments from Hayes's personal account to victims' accounts, always labeled consulting fee or medical reimbursement, audio files. We clicked one at random, a woman's voice shaking. He told me it was normal to feel dizzy after the procedure, said he'd drive me home, but I woke up in a hotel room. I don't remember anything after leaving his office. Another file. Hayes's voice, calm and cold. "You're confused. The medication causes memory issues. Nothing inappropriate happened. If you make accusations, I'll have to question your mental stability." 17 women. 17 stories almost identical. Drugged, assaulted, gaslit, silenced. And then the Margaret Caldwell file. Sarah opened it. The first document was a police report from the 28th of July, 1995. Margaret's car found at Trillium Lake. No body, no witnesses. Case suspended. Probable suicide. But clipped to the report was a handwritten note in my mother's writing. Margaret called me at 9:47 p.m., July 27th. Said she'd just confronted Hayes. He'd threatened her. She was scared. I told her to go to the police first thing in the morning. She never made it. Phone records showing Margaret had called Hayes's home at 7:15 p.m. that night. 20-minute conversation. Then, and this made my breath catch, a private investigator's report dated 2003. My mother had hired someone to examine Margaret's car, which had been auctioned off by the county years earlier. The investigator found microscopic traces of sedative in the carpet fibers of the back seat. Someone had administered drugs in that car. Crime scene photos showed Margaret's car door open, keys in ignition, purse on the passenger seat. But my mother had circled something in red pen. No footprints leading from the driver's side to the lake. If Margaret had walked into the water, there should have been tracks. Instead, prints led from the rear passenger side. My mother's note. She was already unconscious when he brought her here. He put her in the back seat, drove her car to the lake, staged it as suicide. Margaret drowned, but she never walked into that water herself. "Oh God," Sarah whispered. "He killed her and made it look like she'd killed herself." Emma was clicking through more files. "Dad, look at this. A document titled Hayes Murder Plan 2024. My mother's handwriting. dated the 18th of March, 2024, 7 months ago. Confronted Hayes today at his office. Told him I have evidence of 17 assaults and Margaret's murder. He laughed. Said, "Catherine, you're 84 years old. Heart disease runs in your family. If something happened to you, no one would question it." And all this, he gestured at my briefcase, would disappear, just like Margaret's evidence did. Direct threat. He knows I know. I have maybe months before he acts. Need to secure everything. Prepare Robert. Make sure evidence survives me. The next entry was March 30. Chest pains today. Not cardiac. I know cardiac. Took myself to ER, had full workup. Doctor said everything normal, probably anxiety. But I know better. Hayes has access to my medical records. He knows what medications I take. He could easily tamper. The entries stopped April 5. My mother died September 12. He killed her, I said aloud. The words felt unreal. He knew she had evidence, so he killed her. "We need to call the police," Sarah said. "Right now." But Emma was staring at the computer screen, face drained of color. "Dad, Sarah, look at this." A folder labeled Robert, Current, Medical, Records. She opened it. Inside, copies of my prescription history from Hayes's office. Medications for high blood pressure, cholesterol, acid reflux. Standard stuff. But my mother had highlighted certain entries in red. A medication called lorazepam, prescribed 2022 present. Low dose, refilled monthly. My mother's note beside it, benzodiazepine. Causes memory problems, compliance, passivity. Hayes has been keeping Robert on this for 2 years. Robert thinks it's for sleep. Actually, it's to keep him from asking questions. Same method he used in 1995. If I disappear, Hayes will increase Robert's dose to ensure he doesn't investigate. I pulled the pill bottle from my pocket. I'd taken one this morning. Hayes had prescribed them in 2022 after I mentioned trouble sleeping. Harmless sleep aid, he'd said. Jesus Christ, Sarah breathed. He's been drugging you for 2 years? That's why Dad's been so foggy lately, Emma said, looking at me. You kept forgetting things. Appointments, conversations. We thought it was just age. It wasn't age. It was William Hayes, keeping me sedated so I wouldn't remember what my mother was doing, so I wouldn't ask questions when she died. We need to call Detective Park, I said, my voice shaking. We need to do it right now. Sarah already had her phone out. But before she could dial, my phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Robert, it's Bill Hayes. I heard about the lawyer meeting today. I'm so sorry for your loss. Catherine was a wonderful woman. If you need to talk, or if there's anything from her medical records you'd like to discuss, please call me. I'm here for you. The three of us stared at that message. He knew. Somehow, Hayes knew we'd been to the lawyer. He was watching us. Don't respond, Emma said immediately. We called Detective Park. Now. Detective James Park answered on the third ring. I explained who I was, that my mother had left instructions to contact him, that we had evidence of multiple assaults and a murder. He was silent for a long moment. Catherine Mitchell, he said finally. I've been waiting for this call for 5 years. You knew my mother? She came to me in 2019, brought preliminary evidence about Margaret Caldwell's death, said she was building a case but needed more proof, asked me to keep the case file active. His voice tightened. When I heard she'd died in September, I wondered, Mr. Mitchell, where are you right now? Secure Space Storage Facility, Beaverton, Unit 1, 27. Don't leave. I'm sending patrol units to your location immediately. Don't touch anything else. Don't go home. Don't contact anyone. He paused. Especially don't contact Dr. William Hayes. He already texted me 10 minutes ago. Park swore. He knows you found the evidence. Mr. Mitchell, you and your daughters are in danger. I'm dispatching protection right now. 2 patrol cars arrived within 20 minutes. 4 officers, all business. They secured the storage unit, took our statements. Detective Park arrived an hour later, African-American, early 50s, with the weary competence of someone who'd seen too much. He walked through the storage unit slowly, examining filing cabinets, reading my mother's notes. When he finished, he turned to us. Your mother built a federal case. This is enough to get warrants, subpoenas, forensic audits. We're talking 17 counts of sexual assault, 1 count of first-degree murder, evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and medical fraud. He looked at me, and we're reopening your mother's death as a suspicious homicide. You think Hayes killed her, Sarah said. I think Hayes has killed multiple people and gotten away with it for 30 years, Park replied grimly. Your grandmother figured that out. And yes, I think he killed her to silence her. An officer approached. Detective, we've got a problem. Dr. Hayes isn't at his home. His office says he called in sick this morning. His car's not at his residence. Park's jaw tightened. Put out a bolo. Now. He turned back to us. Mr. Mitchell, when did Hayes text you? 6:47 p.m. 45 minutes ago. He was testing to see if you'd respond. When you didn't, he ran. Park pulled out his radio. All units. Suspect is William Charles Hayes, age 62. White male, 5'10", 180 pounds. Consider armed and dangerous. Last known address. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the same number. Robert, I know you're with the police. I know what Catherine told you, but she was wrong about so much. Meet me tomorrow, 9 a.m., at the shelter where Margaret used to volunteer. 2847, Burnside. Come alone. We'll talk. If you bring police, you'll never know the truth about what really happened. And Robert, bring that medication bottle I gave you? You'll need it. Park read the message over my shoulder. He's escalating. The shelter location is significant. That's where Margaret Caldwell was volunteering when she found his victims. He's making a statement. What kind of statement? Emma asked. That he's controlled this narrative for 30 years, and he's not giving up control now. Park looked at me. This is a trap, Mr. Mitchell. He wants you isolated. He'll try to kill you like he killed your mother and Margaret. Then we use it, Sarah said suddenly. Set up surveillance. Wire Dad. Put SWAT in position. Make Hayes think Dad's coming alone, then take him down. Park shook his head. Too dangerous. If Hayes sees any sign of police presence, he'll disappear. We might not get another chance. He paused. But your daughter's right about one thing. We can wire you. Full audio and video. Tactical teams in place, but hidden. Hayes talks. Admits to anything. We move in. You're using my father as bait, Emma said flatly. I'm giving your father a chance to get justice for his mother. For Margaret. For 17 women. Park met my eyes. But it's your choice, Mr. Mitchell. You don't have to do this. I thought about my mother, spending 29 years collecting evidence, keeping secrets, carrying the weight alone to protect me. About Margaret, who'd tried to do the right thing and died for it. About 17 women whose lives Hayes had destroyed. I'll do it, I said. I'll meet him tomorrow. Sarah grabbed my arm. Dad, no, this is insane. He'll kill you. Not if Detective Park's team is there. I looked at Park. You'll get him, right? You won't let him walk away? We'll get him, Park promised. Whatever he says, whatever he admits, we'll have it on tape. And the moment he makes a threatening move, we'll take him down. That night, we stayed at a hotel downtown Park's orders. 2 officers stationed outside our rooms. I barely slept. Emma and Sarah took turns sitting with me, none of us willing to be alone with the weight of what we'd learned. At 6 a.m., Park arrived with an FBI technical team. They fitted me with a wire tiny microphone disguised as a button on my shirt, camera hidden in my glasses. They went over protocols, keep Hayes talking, get him to admit specific details, signal if I felt in immediate danger. Remember, Park said, Hayes thinks he's in control. Let him believe that. Narcissists love to explain themselves. Get him talking about Margaret, about your mother, about the attacks. The more he says, the stronger our case. At 8:30, we drove to Burnside Street. The old shelter where Margaret had volunteered was now a community center, but the building was closed for renovation, abandoned, isolated, perfect for a confrontation. Park's team had arrived at dawn, set up surveillance in 3 surrounding buildings. SWAT was positioned 2 blocks away. They'd made sure no one else was in the vicinity, cleared the area with a fake gas leak story. I parked my car at 8:55. Hayes's silver Mercedes was already there, parked behind the building. Through my glasses camera, the command team was watching everything. Park's voice came through the nearly invisible earpiece. "We've got eyes on you, Robert. Hayes is inside. Ground floor, east room. We see no weapons visible, but assume he's armed. Keep him talking. We're 30 seconds away if you need us." I walked to the front entrance. The door was unlocked. Inside, the smell of dust and decay. Stripped walls, empty rooms. My footsteps echoed. "Robert." Hayes's voice came from the right. I turned. He stood in what had once been Margaret's volunteer office, sunlight streaming through dirty windows. William Hayes looked exactly as he always had: trim, professional, silver hair, calm expression. The respected physician, the family friend, the monster. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would." "What do you want, Bill?" "To explain. Your mother told you her version, but there's so much she didn't understand." He gestured to 2 folding chairs. "Please, sit." I remained standing. "Did you kill Margaret Caldwell?" Hayes smiled sadly. "Is that what Catherine told you? That I murdered her dear friend?" "Robert, I treated Margaret for depression for 3 years. She was unstable, paranoid. She made terrible accusations, claimed I'd assaulted patients. It wasn't true, but she believed it. That night she called me, threatened to destroy my career, my family. I tried to talk her down, but she was hysterical. So you killed her?" "I tried to save her," Hayes said, and his voice carried conviction. "She was suicidal, Robert. I went to her house that night, tried to get her to go to the hospital, but she ran. Got in her car. I followed her to Trillium Lake. By the time I got there, she'd already walked into the water. I tried to pull her out, but..." He shook his head. "I was too late." "You're lying." "My mother found sedatives in Margaret's car. Margaret was drugged. Margaret was on antidepressants, benzodiazepines, prescribed by her psychiatrist. She'd taken too many that night, accidental overdose combined with suicidal ideation. The sedatives in the car were hers, Robert, not mine." He was good, smooth. Every answer rehearsed, plausible. But Park had warned me narcissists can't resist correcting the narrative. "What about the 17 women?" I asked. "The ones who say you assaulted them?" Hayes's expression darkened. "Accusations, all unsubstantiated. Robert, I've been a physician for 40 years. I've treated thousands of patients. Some of them unfortunately develop inappropriate attachments. When I maintain professional boundaries, they feel rejected. They lash out." He stepped closer. "Your mother believed them because she wanted to. She needed someone to blame for Margaret's death. I became her obsession. She spent 29 years building a case against you. She spent 29 years destroying her own mental health with paranoid conspiracy theories. Robert, I tried to help her. I prescribed medication for her anxiety, her obsessive thoughts, but she refused treatment. She let her delusions consume her. Did you kill my mother?" The question hung in the air. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, colder. "Your mother had a heart attack. Natural causes. The death certificate is legitimate. You signed that death certificate because I was her physician. I'd treated her cardiac issues for 20 years. When she collapsed at home, the paramedics called me. I met them at the hospital. By the time I arrived, she was gone. Heart failure, consistent with her medical history. You tampered with her medication," I said. "Just like you tampered with mine." Hayes tilted his head. "What are you talking about?" "The lorazepam. You've been keeping me sedated for 2 years. Same thing you did in 1995, drugged me to make me forget that Margaret had told me about your victims." For the first time, Hayes's expression shifted. Not guilt, satisfaction. So Catherine figured that out too. Clever woman. "But Robert, you're still taking those pills, aren't you?" "You took one this morning." My stomach dropped. The bottle was in my pocket. I'd taken one at 6 a.m., before the FBI arrived, before I knew better. "How long does it take to kick in?" Hayes asked conversationally. 45 minutes? Hour? Must be hitting your system right about now. My hands were starting to tremble, not from fear, from the drug. What did you do? I demanded, but my voice was slurred. I adjusted your prescription 3 weeks ago, increased the active compound, added a delayed sedative component. The dose you took this morning? Hayes checked his watch. Should be rendering you substantially impaired right about now. The room tilted. I grabbed for the wall to steady myself. Through the earpiece, I heard Park's voice. Robert, we're coming in. Hold on. But my legs weren't working right. I slid down the wall, vision blurring. Hayes knelt beside me. Here's the truth, Robert. Yes, I assaulted those women. Yes, I killed Margaret, though technically, drowning someone who's already unconscious is an assault. It's just efficient problem solving. And yes, I killed your mother. Potassium injection, administered during a routine blood draw, causes cardiac arrest, indistinguishable from natural causes. He was confessing. The wire was getting everything, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Your mother thought she was so clever, collecting evidence for 29 years. But she made one crucial mistake. She kept seeing me as her doctor, kept letting me adjust her medications, draw her blood, monitor her health. She trusted me right up until the moment I stopped her heart. Footsteps, running, Park's voice shouting, "Police! Hands up!" Hayes didn't move. He looked at me, smiled. You were going to testify in 1995. Margaret had convinced you. So I drugged you, made you forget. And it worked. It worked for 30 years. Your mother protected you by keeping you ignorant. But now you know everything. And that means... He pulled a syringe from his pocket. Same thing I gave your mother. Quick, painless. They'll rule it a heart attack, just like hers. Genetic predisposition. Father and son. Tragic. The door exploded inward. SWAT team, weapons drawn. Drop it. Drop the syringe. Hayes didn't drop it. He lunged toward me, needle aimed at my neck. The shot was instantaneous, not fatal, Park had promised, but Hayes's arm jerked as the rubber bullet hit his shoulder. The syringe flew across the room. Officers swarmed him, slamming him to the ground, cuffing him. Park knelt beside me, checking my pulse. Ambulance is 90 seconds out. Stay with me, Robert. What did you take? Lorazepam, I managed. This morning, he said. Adjusted dose. Park was on his radio. Possible benzodiazepine overdose. Need gastric lavage and flumazenol on arrival. He looked down at me. You did good. We got him. Everything he said, full confession. Murder, assault, tampering. We got him. The last thing I remembered before the paramedics arrived was Hayes's voice, being read his rights. You have the right to remain silent. And Hayes laughing. Actually laughing. Silent? Oh, detective. After 30 years, I'm not going to be silent. I'm going to tell everyone exactly what I did. Every detail. Let them all know how easy it was. I woke up in the hospital 12 hours later. Sarah and Emma were there, both red-eyed from crying. A doctor explained, I'd been treated for benzodiazepine overdose. Hayes had increased my prescription to nearly 4 times the normal dose. Another few days, and it could have caused respiratory depression. My mother had known. That's why she'd rushed to update her will, to leave the video, to make sure I found out in time. Detective Park arrived that afternoon. Hayes is talking. Won't shut up, actually. Confessed to everything 17 assaults. Margaret's murder. Your mother's murder. Attempted murder of you. He's waiving his right to a trial. Wants to plead guilty. Says he wants his legacy on record. He's insane, Emma said. No, Park replied. He's a narcissist. He thinks he's the smartest person in the room. Wants everyone to know how clever he was. Getting away with it for 3 decades. He looked at me. Your mother's evidence is corroborating everything. We've contacted all 17 victims. Most of them are willing to testify. Margaret's case is officially reopened as a homicide. Your mother's death is ruled murder. William Hayes is going to prison for the rest of his life. The trial, despite Hayes waiving jury trial, there was still sentencing took place 3 months later. I testified about my mother's investigation, about the storage unit, about the wire-recorded confession. All 17 victims testified. It was devastating, powerful, necessary, Hayes showed no remorse. When asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, he stood and spoke for 20 minutes about how he'd outsmarted everyone, how he'd controlled the narrative, how Margaret and my mother had been obstacles to be removed. The judge sentenced him to 17 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. As they led him away, Hayes looked directly at me and smiled. "Your mother was brilliant," he said. "But I still won. I had 30 years of freedom. She spent 29 years trapped in obsession. Who really won, Robert?" I didn't answer. Because he was wrong. My mother had won. She'd protected me. She'd built an unbreakable case. She'd ensured justice would come. Even after her death. That's not obsession. That's love. 6 months after Hayes' sentencing, Sarah, Emma, and I gathered at my mother's grave. We'd installed a new headstone with an inscription Emma had suggested. Catherine Mitchell, 1940 to 2024. Private investigator. Protector. Justice seeker. She fought in silence so others could speak. Beside her grave, we planted a dogwood tree, Margaret's favorite. A memorial to the friend my mother had spent 3 decades avenging. "I'm angry at her," Sarah said quietly. "For keeping secrets, for drugging Dad, for carrying all this alone." "I know," I said. "I'm angry too. But I understand why she did it." Emma wiped her eyes. "She traded her peace for our safety. That's what grandparents do, right? Sacrifice themselves so we don't have to." We stood there as the sun set, and I thought about my mother's final video message. "Everything I did was to keep you alive." She'd been right. If I'd known the truth in 1995, I would have gone to the police. Hayes would have killed me. If I'd known in 2024, I would have confronted him. He would have killed me. My mother had carried the burden alone, built her case in secret, protected me from the truth until she could ensure the truth would destroy Hayes, not me. That wasn't betrayal. That was love in its most complicated, painful, sacrificial form. "Dad," Sarah asked, "what would you have done differently? If you'd known in 1995, would you have stayed silent to stay safe? Or would you have fought like Margaret did?" I thought about that for a long time. "I don't know," I admitted. "I'd like to think I'd have been brave like Margaret, but honestly, I probably would have been afraid. Margaret fought and died. My mother fought and survived long enough to finish the job. Maybe that's the real lesson. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't the dramatic gesture. Sometimes it's the quiet, decades-long war you wage in secret, knowing no one will thank you because no one knows." We left flowers, white roses for my mother, yellow daisies for Margaret. As we walked back to the car, Emma said, "Grandma left one more thing. Detective Park gave it to me last week. She handed me a flash drive, a letter. She recorded it a week before she died. It's for you." That night, alone in my apartment, I played the video. My mother's face appeared, older than the last recording, more tired, but peaceful. "Robert," she began, "if you're watching this, everything worked. Hayes is in custody. You're safe, and I can finally rest." She smiled. "I know you're angry. I know you feel betrayed. But my darling son, I need you to understand I don't regret a single choice I made. Not drugging you in 1995 to save your life. Not spending 29 years in secret to build this case. Not dying to finish what Margaret started." Her eyes filled with tears. "Here's what I learned, Robert. Love without truth is manipulation. Protection without transparency is control. I was wrong to keep so many secrets. I was wrong to make choices for you without your knowledge. If I could do it again," she paused. "No, I wouldn't change anything. Because you're alive, you're safe, and Hayes is finally stopped." She leaned closer to the camera. "But I hope you learn what I didn't. When you have to protect someone, do it with honesty. When you have to carry a burden, share it with people who love you. Don't spend 30 years fighting alone like I did. Don't sacrifice your own peace thinking it's the only way." She wiped her eyes. "Tell Sarah and Emma I'm proud of them. Tell them their grandfather would have been proud too. And Robert, forgive me. Not for keeping you safe, but for making you doubt whether I trusted you. I always trusted you. I just loved you more than I trusted your safety. In a world where men like William Hayes exist, The video ended with her final words: "Live fully, love honestly, fight for justice. But please, please don't fight alone." I sat in the dark for a long time, crying. Not from anger anymore, but from understanding. My mother had been brilliant and flawed, protective and controlling, heroic and human. She'd saved my life by stealing my memories. She'd avenged her best friend by sacrificing her own peace. She'd built a case so thorough that even her death couldn't stop justice. And she'd taught me the hardest lesson of all, that love isn't always gentle, protection isn't always kind, and sometimes the people who hurt us are the same people who save us. 3 months later, Sarah called with news. A advocacy group for assault survivors wanted to honor my mother posthumously. They were establishing the Catherine Mitchell Award for individuals who worked in secret to expose predators and protect victims. At the ceremony, I spoke about my mother not as a perfect hero, but as a complicated woman who'd made impossible choices in impossible circumstances. I talked about Margaret, about the 17 victims, about how long it took for truth to emerge when power protected predators. A woman approached me afterward. "I'm Jennifer Torres," she said. "I was one of the women who told Margaret about Hayes in 1995. I've lived with guilt for 30 years, wondering if I'd spoken up sooner, if Margaret would still be alive. Your mother, her work, it freed me. I want you to know that." I hugged her. This stranger who'd carried her own burden for 3 decades. "My mother would want you to know," I said, "that you were brave. Margaret was brave, and justice took 30 years. But it came. Now, at 63, I volunteer at the same women's shelter where Margaret once worked. I tell my story, the parts that matter, about how predators hide in plain sight, how silence protects them, how speaking truth can cost everything but is worth everything. And I think about my mother's final lesson, the one she spent 29 years teaching me, that justice and love are complicated, that protection and control are closer than we want to believe, and that sometimes the greatest gift we can give the people we love is not peace, but truth, even when truth is painful, even when it comes too late, even when it costs us everything. Margaret didn't get to see justice. My mother barely did. But because they fought, because they refused to let evil hide, 17 women finally had their voices heard. A killer finally faced consequences, and I finally understood what it means to love someone enough to carry their secrets, bear their burden, and ensure their fight doesn't die with them. That's the story I tell now. Not a simple story about good defeating evil, but a complicated story about flawed people making difficult choices, about how justice rarely comes easily or quickly, and about how the people we think we know best often carry burdens we can't imagine. Before I end, I want to say this to anyone listening. If someone you love kept secrets to protect you, try to forgive them. If someone you trust seems too good to be true, pay attention to what the vulnerable people around them whisper. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, don't fight alone. Build your case. Find allies. Protect yourself. And if you're carrying a burden of secret knowledge, remember my mother's final words. Don't fight alone. Catherine Mitchell spent 29 years in the shadows so justice could finally step into the light. She's gone now, but her work lives on. And every time a survivor finds the courage to speak, every time a predator faces consequences, every time truth overcomes power, my mother's legacy continues. That's all that matters in the end, not whether we're perfect protectors or gentle truth-tellers, but whether we fight for justice even when the cost is everything, and whether we leave behind evidence that truth will eventually, inevitably, win.